Welcome, everyone. This is Debbie Mayberry with National Kitchen and Bath Association. You're here for our third webinar of the month on small spaces design. Today's session is called Designing Showers with Heavy Glass in Mind, Tips, Tricks, Triumphs, and Pitfalls. And Shannon McKinney is here with us, and she's the owner of DT Glass. And I want to just shout out quickly to Bloom for their generous sponsorship for all of our webinars for the month of July. And Shannon, we're ready to get started. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you. It really is my pleasure to be here today. I have such an appreciation for most of the people on this webinar. You architects, designers, and contractors, you really have to pull together so many pieces of information. You have to know the materials and the processes, and you have to have it all work together to create a cohesive final result. And to help you do that, I'm happy to give my small piece of the puzzle and tell you more about heavy glass. So let's get started. I have a little bit of information about me, not much, but it's nice to put a face with the voice. So here's me in my native habitat. This is our showroom in Oregon City, and we have been in business installing since 1997. And then we also have a fabrication plant. So we do the full range, we cut and polish, and we have a tempering furnace. So we actually produce about 90% of the showers that we install. It's really nice to be able to take it from beginning to end throughout the process. Give you an idea of size, we have 20 employees. Number 21 starts on Friday. So that is us. And I wanted to give you that qualifier because we are really talking today about our experience. There aren't any standards for shower glass, nothing set in stone to say this is how you must do it. So everyone works from their experience. We also use information that's been provided by our hardware manufacturing, and that's going to be the engineering guidelines, what their hardware can and cannot do. We also, because we're a fabricator, we understand tempered glass, so we pull that into it. But as I give you this information, I don't want you to feel that I am telling you exactly how it has to be done. I would really prefer that this be a way to give you ideas and give you the start to a conversation. And so hopefully you can find a local glass person that you think is helpful, you can build a relationship with, and you can work with that person on specific plans and really figure out what needs to happen on your specific showers. So think of that. As I provide you with information, towards the end, there's going to be the opportunity to get a heavy shower design guide from us. I have a document that we use internally and I provide to my customers, and that's really what this presentation is built from. So I would be happy to share that with all of you later on if you'd like. Now here's our agenda. I'm going to have lots of pictures and illustrations and provide some information and inspiration. And as we go through here, we're going to start off with heavy glass showers. You know, what's the definition? When are they used? Should they not be used? We're going to look at requirements. We'll talk a little bit about code, but the engineering and fabrication portion is really going to be throughout the presentation. It'll be sprinkled in. And then we'll talk about design. We'll put it together in step 1, step 2, step 3. We'll start with the layout. Then we'll look at where we want to place the door and then put the panels around it. I really want to spend a lot of time at the end about all of the details because we'll be talking high level when we're doing the design 1, 2, 3, but it's really the details where all of the specifics come into play and the potential gotchas. I'm going to apologize in advance. When we talk about the details, sometimes I'm going to sound pretty negative because I really want to share with you some of the bad things that have happened so that you don't end up falling into going down that same path. So it may sound kind of negative, but there's lots of great uses of glass, and I want to help you down the right path by showing you some of the trip ups that are out there. So next we're going to take a look over at the, oh, sorry. Oh my, there we go. I've got this. All right, let's talk about those definitions. So I've been saying heavy glass, and I always talk about heavy glass showers. Other words that are used for these showers are frameless. Sometimes people will mention architectural glass. They used to call it European because, of course, the Europeans are always the first ones to be using any design, and so we first started seeing heavy glass showers in Europe. People will also say that they want the spa showers, but what homeowners really mean is that they want as little metal as possible. So the definition is that we're talking about showers that are made with 3/8 and 1/2 inch glass. And that glass is strong enough to maintain its structure without being completely surrounded by metal. With that, we do still need metal because we have to attach it. We have to attach it to walls and curbs and perhaps ceilings. We have to make sure that the glass is being held in place, and we usually have to do that with metal. When people are looking at the top shower with the clips holding up the glass, they're usually fine with that. But as we look at designs that require headers, a lot of times homeowners will look at that header bar, they'll look at the channel along the side and the bottoms, and they'll say, no, that is not what I wanted. I wanted a frameless shower. And that bottom picture is a frameless shower because it's 3/8 and 1/2 inch glass. It's just that the placement of the door in the center there requires that we put that metal on top. We've got to do something to hold it in place. And so I like to just not use the word frameless. I think it sets us down the wrong path for the conversation. So heavy glass, and then conversations about how we're going to attach that heavy glass. So the other types of showers would be framed or semi-frameless. Sometimes people will call them component doors. A lot of times they're referred to as prefabricated because these are the doors that are most likely to be purchased as a kit in standard sizes from the box stores. So these showers are going to be made with thinner glass. It'll be 3/16 or 1/4 inch usually. And the top picture shows a fully framed shower that has framing all around the door and then also around the panel and the top. And the second picture is showing a semi-frameless shower, and it's semi-frameless because the door itself does not have metal around it, and the panels where they come together in the corner, that doesn't have metal, it just has glass to glass there. So that's what makes a shower a semi-frameless shower. Now, there are some times where you want to use a framed or semi-frameless shower instead of heavy glass, and specifically that would be where you've got fiberglass walls. No matter how much backing you have in those fiberglass walls, if you put heavy glass over fiberglass, it'll have the tendency to break away the fiberglass at the pressure points, especially at the hinges as the door is moving back and forth. It just creates too much pressure on the fiberglass, and we don't recommend it for heavy glass. Also, framed and semi-frameless showers are much more water resistant than heavy glass. So if you have a situation your homeowner really needs to have a more watertight shower, then we should really talk to them about not using heavy glass because there will be leakage with heavy glass. There's going to be gaps between the door and the door and the panel, the door and the wall underneath, and those gaps have the tendency to leak. We do have some options to help with leakage, and so that would be in the form of sweeps and seals. We always put a door sweep at the bottom of the door, and that keeps the water from seeping out underneath along the curb. If that curb is having some difficulties, perhaps it's not quite sloped enough into the shower, or a lot of times on tubs it'll be very flat, we might use a threshold, and that threshold will be glued down and create a sort of a water dam to keep the water out. But anytime that you have water sprayed directly in between, unless we block that gap in between the two pieces of glass, we're going to have the water coming out. So that door jamb is one way to block the water. And then we've got various other tools to attach to the back side of the door at the hinge side to keep water from coming out. A lot of times when we're suggesting this, homeowners don't like this any more than they like the idea of metal. So we really need to look at shower designs that keep the water focused away from the glass and not towards the glass. Try and avoid the body jets and other things that are going to spray right in those gaps when you're working with heavy glass showers. And also just have that conversation with the homeowners, because when you're working with a homeowner in advance and they start to use their shower and they recognize that when they clean the shower with the wand, water comes through the pieces of glass, they can say, oh yeah, that's normal, that happens, that makes sense to me. Whereas if you haven't had some of those conversations, a little bit of water leakage means that the homeowner is now concerned that their shower is failing and they're really upset. So we'd just like to have those conversations up front and set the right expectations. Now, heading into some of the requirement conversation, we'll talk specifically about building codes, but I can't talk about any of your codes. I can only talk about some examples from our Portland metro area. So you definitely want to check around, find out what your own specific building codes are, and adhere to those from the beginning, because designing in advance is going to be so much easier. So our Portland codes start with the glass. The shower glass must be tempered. You'll probably find that throughout the country. So tempered glass is sometimes called safety glass. When it breaks into thousands of pieces that aren't going to hurt people, maybe a little bit of a prick. But without tempered glass, it's really going to break into shards that are very dangerous and can really hurt people. So the glass must be tempered, first of all. Also here, the door must be able to open outward, and that's for safety purposes. If something happens to the person in the shower and someone else needs to come in and help them, that door has to be able to open out to access them. And that same thing with the minimum door opening. That opening should be big enough so that you can help that person out or get in yourself and take care of whatever situation has happened. Here in Portland, that minimum is a 22-inch opening. Now, one of the things to watch for when you do find out what your minimum number is in your area is that the hinge pivot point will impact that opening size. So if we were to have a 22-inch door, the pivot point of the hinge would actually create a 21-inch opening. So you want to make sure that you have that in mind, and perhaps don't try and get right at the minimum. That's really pretty small anyway. We like to use about a 28 or a 30-inch door. We think that's got kind of a nice feel, so that's one way to go. And then again, here in Portland, the toilet cannot be too close to the piece of glass. So the way you measure that is that here it's 15 inches from the center of the toilet flange to the glass. Finally, in Portland, we have a code that says that you must be able to reach the controls from outside of the shower. Now, this is not very strictly enforced, luckily, because there are some designs that make this really difficult. The best way to be able to access the controls is to have the door right next to where the shower head is, and that's usually the wall where the controls are located. But sometimes you've got the toilet right there, you've got a sink there, and so sometimes we need to have a panel there instead, and it can be difficult to reach in and work the controls. So keeping that in mind, you might, if the budget allows it, move those controls to another wall or change where the shower head location is. I know that can be difficult, but if possible, not only is it good for code, at least our code here and potentially yours, but it's also just a nice way to operate the shower. If you imagine having to step into your shower to turn it on, you've got a rude awakening in the morning as the cold water comes blasting onto you. And then after you turn on the shower, the whole reason that that rule is in place is because you don't want to turn on the shower really high. Over time, you end up with scalding hot water, and then you're having trouble turning that down because you have to actually get into the shower and potentially be hurt in order to turn that water down. So those are our local building codes, and please research your own, and so you don't get surprised down the road. I want to talk about our first design step, and that is determining the layout. We're going to go through some of these quickly because it'll depend on a lot of other factors within the bathroom, but I just want to give you some thoughts and show you some pictures of these different layouts. So the first one is an alcove shower. That's where you've got 3 framed and tiled walls, and then the 4th wall is made of glass in some form, whether it's multiple panels, a door, double doors, but it's a wall framed inline. Next, we could have a corner shower. So we've got 2 framed walls, and then our glass acts as the other 2 walls and comes together at a 90 degree. And then you could have neo-angle showers. Neo-angle showers are usually in the corner. You've got 3 panels, and where the panels come together, those come together at 135 degrees. A lot of times this is used in small layouts, small bathrooms, and you can see that in the bottom left-hand shower. It's quite small, but it can also be bigger showers too. That top shower is a really nice size, and using those neo angles allowed the person putting it together to really pull that wall out a little bit and give some extra space in that shower. And then finally, if you only have 1 wall and 3 walls of glass, we call that the cube. Basically, any shower where you're kind of protruding into the room with your shower. I love this shower, and I love this picture, but it can be a little difficult to see the glass here. I hope you're seeing that this is a giant piece of glass behind the tub, and then on either side, we've got multiple panels that are tying that piece of glass back over to the wall. So we call that one the cube. And really the layout can be anything you want. You can have a combination of walls and glass. You can see in the bottom left that we've got one section of the shower that has a panel and a door, and then on the other side of the shower is the second door. We've also done pieces of glass kind of like a window within the shower. So any combination you can think of, or as shown on the right, maybe you've just got one single piece of glass. The second step is we're laying out our showers to determine where the door is going to be. And that kind of sets the stage for the rest of the shower. In an ideal design, the door would be hinged off the wall. It would be hinged near the shower head. It would be less than 36 inches wide and less than 100 pounds. And in that scenario, we don't have to worry too much about code and being able to reach it. We don't have to worry too much about getting a lot of water out of the shower. We can use standard hardware because it's within a certain width and weight that allows us to use standard hardware. But that can't always happen. So if the door is too big or too heavy, we can use heavy-duty hinges, and those heavy-duty hinges may allow for additional width or additional weight. And some installers will use 3 hinges. We prefer not to use 3 hinges. One thing that's really important in hinges is that they be perfectly aligned so that they have the same pivot point. It's hard to perfectly align 3 hinges on a shower wall. Sometimes it's not perfectly level. And so you end up with a situation where one of the 3 hinges is not quite in line, and it ends up working and, either damaging the hinge over time or potentially damaging the glass. Another thing we run into when people are looking for that really big door that becomes really heavy is that they end up talking about wanting to make it accessible over time, the aging in place, and, what if I need a wider opening? One of the things that we like to do is pull back a little bit and mention the fact that in most cases, unless you've modified it, your entry to the bathroom itself is going to be a standard 36 30-inch opening, and then your door is going to be in the way, so it'll really be less than that. So the idea of having a shower door opening that's bigger than your actual room door opening, it really may not be necessary. So we like to kind of talk about what people are looking for and maybe bring it down to something reasonable. Now, the other possibility is that you need that door to not hinge off of the wall. Perhaps that location is bad. You want to have a panel there and then the door. Now, if that happens, we're going to need something else to support that door. A door maybe 85 to 100 pounds, and we need it to be securely attached. If we need to attach it to another piece of glass, some of our methods are we can use a support bar, we can use a header, we can attach to the ceiling, we can use a half-inch panel for support, and I'm going to show you some of those options in more detail. But what I want to point out here is that at the design stage, you can also change your walls. Sometimes when we're running into these issues, it's like, oh gosh, where is that door going to go? And then I realize we're looking at plans, and I'm like, can you frame a wall here? Could we just do that? So always keep in mind, if you're at the beginning and anything's possible, maybe use a wall. So let's look at that door support. When we have a door that's hinged from the wall, that's on the very left-hand side, that's easy, that's ideal. Our next picture shows where we can't hinge it off the wall for some purpose. I'm not sure exactly why they wanted it in the middle in this particular picture. But what we did was we supported that door with a header. So this door has pivot hinges installed at the curb and at the header, and those pivot hinges are what's holding up the door. The panel is not having to be structurally strong enough to hold the door. The metal header is. Another option is to support the door from the ceiling. So in the third picture, the panel runs from floor to ceiling, and then the door is hinged off of that. So the panel's on the right-hand side, the door on the left, and those glass-to-glass hinges are able to keep the door from being next to the wall because that panel has that extra support from the ceiling. And then the fourth option is to support a door from a half-inch panel. So we've got 3 panels in this fourth picture. The first panel on the left is a half-inch panel that's held with heavy-duty clips to the wall, and then it's got 2 clips down at the bottom. When we set up a panel within certain specifications, so half-inch, all of those clips, heavy-duty clips, and it has to be at least 22 inches or a maximum of 22 inches wide, then we can hinge a door off of it. So again, we've got some pivot hinges. We've got a pivot hinge at the curb at the bottom, and then over the top, we've got a pivot hinge that attaches to the top of our half-inch panel and then allows the door to swing. We have some limitations to the door. It can only be a certain width and a certain weight in order to do this, but you can see that when we put this together, you actually have a shower with no header, doesn't have to go to the ceiling, all of the panels are in line, and we're able to use that half-inch panel for support. So ideally, if you can hinge from the wall, that would be great, but if you can't, here are some tools that you can pull out of your toolbox to make it happen. Let's talk next about placing the panel. So we've decided where our door is. We're going to fill in the rest of the shower with panels, and we need to attach those panels to the curb, to the wall. So a couple of methods. We've got the ability to attach with clips, and that's shown in the bottom left-hand corner. That's 2x2 pieces of metal along the bottom and the walls. The other method is to use U-channel, or also known as U-metal, also known as channel. And so that runs along the wall and then along the bottom. In both of these cases, I picked some pictures that had oil rub bronze on some light tiles. So the attachment methods are really showing up in these pictures for illustration. But if you imagine you've got some white tile and you're using chrome or brushed nickel, it's not going to stand out as much as it is here. So we like to be able to, show people as much as possible kind of how that's going to look. It may not be as bad as they have in their mind. Oh my gosh, I have to use metal. If you want more hidden method, you can take that channel, that standard U metal, and we can put it in place after the waterproofing is in, but before the tile has gone down. So if we put that metal in place and then tile around it, in a lot of cases you could have maybe instead of the full 3/4 inches of metal showing, the tile would hide maybe a 1/2 inch and you'd only have a 1/4 inch of metal showing in the top. So that can be a way of hiding that metal. The picture on the top is showing that glass set in stone. And to do this, you really have to work in conjunction with the tile setter, because what happened here is that the internal pieces of marble were set, and then we came along with the glass, and then they put in the external pieces of marble. So that glass is literally set in stone. You're not going to be able to remove that glass. If it breaks, you're going to have to not only replace the glass, but you have to pull out the tile and basically rebuild that shower. So we do like to use those cautions sometimes, but that doesn't happen that often. And if someone truly wants that frameless look, it's really beautiful and nice finished product. I should mention here, we get the question all the time, well, can't you just glue it in? And we definitely, we do everything we can to keep people from wanting to go that route, and we actually won't go that route. So when you glue it in with silicone, that silicone is an adhesive, and it is an integral part of making your shower sturdy, but on its own, it's not sufficient over time. Silicone will actually slough away as homeowners are washing their shower or washing the silicone and wiping it away. It is actually deteriorating over time. And some homeowners get really aggressive. They want to get it nice and clean. Some of them will go at it with a razor blade. And the last thing that I want is for my glass panels to fall down because someone is an overly aggressive cleaner. It's just not the right way to attach glass for the long term. So we will never do that. When we're looking at panel sizes, the ideal sizes are the panels should be at least 6 inches wide, and 6 inches is for our furnace, because the furnace will heat and cool the panels, and it actually changes shape. And trying to get that glass to be flat when it's only 6 inches wide is really difficult. We need thicker pieces of glass, wider. Next, we'd like the panels to be less than 35 inches wide. And when it gets wider than that, then we need some additional support, which I'll show you. We'd also like the panels to be less than 96 inches if we're using 3/8 inch glass. You can go over 96 inches, but we usually switch over to 1/2 inch glass and then may do some additional support there too. And these are our numbers, so you'll want to look. Your local provider may be more conservative or less conservative than us, but this is what we use as guidelines. The other thing that we need to worry about when we're talking about the size of a panel is deflection. And so deflection is the fact that glass will bend. People think of glass as very sturdy, and it is, but it does bend, and the amount of bend that you get is going to be more if the size of the panel is bigger. So what we're always looking for is to make sure that the deflection area is less than 10 square feet. So what we do is we look at the side of the panel that is being supported, and we look at the bottom of the panel, and that's the attachment area. And no matter how strong you make that attachment, people are always asking about, well, can't I get heavy-duty clamps? Can't I hold it really securely? Well, it is secure. There's nothing wrong with the panel not being secure enough. But what's happening is there's nothing attaching to that deflection area, the outer corner of the glass. So it's looking at the 10 square feet, you're doing width times height divided by 2. That gets you the area of that triangle that we call the deflection area. If that's over 10 square feet, then we want to do some additional support. So when you've got a panel that needs additional support, we've got several methods. First is a support bar. So you'll see on the left-hand side the piece of metal that is running from that outer corner of the glass back to the wall. Everyone hates this option. They say, no way, I'm not doing that. So that's okay. We've got other tools. Next, we could use a header, just like you saw in the holding the door in place when we needed it. It can also help to support our panel, too. And then we can attach that panel to the ceiling. We try and use as many pictures and displays as possible to show this to the homeowner, because they end up having lots of questions about, ooh, is this going to look okay if I've got the door at one size and then I've got panels that are taller? Is that going to look weird? And I really think that it looks beautiful. I think it adds a real wow factor when you've got glass all the way to the ceiling. But it's nice to be able to explain that and show the homeowner what it's going to look like. And then the fourth option here in the pictures is to use the glass transom. So the glass transom is the piece of glass that is just above the door, and with that piece of glass attached to that deflection point and then bringing it all the way to the wall, that will sturdy up that corner. That makes it nice and solid so that we don't get movement. These will only work to a certain width, and then you may need to do some additional things. You may need to go to only the ceiling support because that's the most sturdy. You may need to go to 1/2-inch glass, but this can get that sturdiness that you need for most panels and most setups. Another thing that I want to mention real quick is that when you are attaching to the ceiling, we need some structure there in the ceiling. We need some framing. We need something solid you can actually attach to. So that may need to be planned ahead. If we wanted to summarize everything that we went through there for layout, doors, panels, what we would do is this uncomplicated design summary. You would have a shower that had a maximum 35-inch door. You would have a maximum 35-inch panel. It would be less than 96 inches tall, and your door would be hinged from the wall. If you have that layout, then you can pretty much stop thinking about your glass. You're fine. But if it starts going over that, then I just want that to prompt you to say, okay, well, what else are we going to use to make sure that we've got all our bases covered? So that is the overall view of designing our shower. I want to talk about all these little details. You can definitely see a variety of colors and patterns in glass. The first picture I'm showing here, we get the request quite a bit for low iron glass. So the piece of glass standing up on the left is regular glass, and it's got that green tint to it. And the bigger the glass and the thicker the glass, the more green you'll see. Whereas the piece of glass on the right is low iron. The iron is what causes the green color, so low iron has more of a blue tint. And again, the bigger the glass and the thicker the glass, the more of the blue color that you'll see. So we want to make sure that we don't make the homeowner think that it's going to be completely without color, because there is still some color there. But that is a little upgrade that some homeowners really appreciate. The next piece of glass, this is patterned glass. I believe that it's rain glass, and there's a variety of patterns, rain glass, Baroque. There's some designer glass by Berman that's really nice. And then my fourth picture, these waves were designed by the homeowner, and the glass was custom etched. So you could have fully etched glass, or you could have glass etched into a pattern. And there are lots of glass manufacturers that will do custom showers like this. I want to point out that, of course, every customization comes with a cost. And when we're talking to people about doing a patterned glass, I usually say plan on at least paying 50% more than with the clear glass. And so when people are looking at patterns, a lot of times I'll quote them in clear glass and patterned glass, because sometimes the patterned glass is a little more than what they had in mind. One of the sticking points for us is towel bar placement, and we have deep conversations about this, trying to talk people out of putting a towel bar on the door whenever we possibly can. We have run into more problems with this than anyone ever should. But when you put a towel bar on the glass, as the door opens, it is very likely that that towel bar is going to hit something the wider you open the door. All kinds of hazards out there. So I've got the drawing there that shows when the door is placed right on the wall, that towel bar will hit the wall. I want to also point out that that same wall configuration, if we've got a towel bar attached to the wall, then the glass itself will eventually run into that towel bar that's placed on the wall. And then when we have situations like this picture on the right, we had the contractor who did all these measurements, and he said, no, I've got this, it's all set up, it's not going to hit anything. Well, he kind of forgot to factor in the fact that the glass moves inward because of the pivot point of the hinge, so he didn't have as much space as he thought he would when the door opened. So like I said, we've just run into too many issues, and so we try to avoid towel bar placement on the door as much as possible. We like to talk to people about putting that towel bar on a panel. So here's a towel bar on the panel. Here's another towel bar that's on the wall, but it's pulled far enough away that it's really not going to impact that door swing. Whenever possible, we try and talk people into this. We also have the ability to put a small robe hook on a panel. So if that panel is smaller, maybe it's not as big as this one and can't handle a full towel bar, maybe we could just put a little through the glass robe hook on the panel and use that to hold the towel while a person's in the shower. We talked about outward swing with the towel bar, and I also want to note that most of the time hinges are also able to swing inward. But just because the hinge can swing inward doesn't mean that the whole door will be able to, and that will be based on what it runs into as it swings in. So we've got some common hazards listed here. If you've got a bench in the way, it's going to impact the door swing. Sometimes standard shower heads, if they're on the hinge side of the door, as I've said they should be, then eventually that door is going to run into it. You may have rain shower heads, and rain shower heads, a lot of times we can take care of that just by making sure that the door is short enough that it's going to go under the rain shower head. Just means planning ahead. And then we're going to talk about some curbless showers, but we've been seeing more and more showers that are sloped towards the front of the shower. And what that means is that if the back of the shower is getting taller, then the door may run into the back of the shower if you want it to swing in. And then sometimes when we're in small spaces, we've got a gabled ceiling back there, so we have to watch for that too. Now, in all of these cases, I like to remind people that it is critical around here, it's code, that we be able to open the door outward. It is not a requirement that the door open inward. So if the door doesn't open inward, if it runs into something, it just means that it only opens outward. It's nothing that it's not a problem that has to be solved. But if someone has that expectation, we want to set along the right path to be able to do that. Next, I want to point out some tile considerations because there are some beautiful, incredible pieces of tile out there. And I hate to look at this lovely tile and just groan, but when we start thinking about how we're going to actually attach glass to some of this tile that is that protrudes or has multiple heights or has these waves, we have to put a straight piece of glass along the tile, and then we have to silicone to try and keep it from leaking. And all of these waves and all of these textures make that really difficult. Now, I also have a picture of glass tile because we always let everybody know that glass tile will break when we drill into it. The way that glass tile is made is that it's got a heat-treated process, and so you can't just drill into it and get a clean hole. That heat-treating process means that as you try to drill into it, it will crack into a straight line. Now, we can get around it as much as possible by putting our holes in between the tile, trying to use the grout line in any place that we need to do like hinge attachments, but sometimes that's difficult to do. So we've also had situations where we've had to have the tile setter specifically cut and grout to create additional grout lines that we could screw into. But one of the easiest ways to deal with all of these problems is to just not use this type of tile wherever the door is sitting. So use that in the interior, do a nice transition so that the curb is something else. But if you can, please try to give us some flat tile that we can attach our glass to. Another piece of tile or material or slab that we might need to deal with is when we've got a pony wall and an overhang, and got this picture here where we have notched through the stone. So we always want to put the glass through the stone instead of trying to put the glass around the stone. You have to have a gap between the glass and the material. And as we try and wrap around, even when we get as close as possible, you do have a gap, and that's not as nice looking as this through the glass method, where it almost looks like when you're stepping back, it almost looks like the glass is just pushed right through it somehow. So that's our preferred method there. Talking a little bit more about neo-angles specifically, I want to point out that when it's used in small showers, like this little corner shower, there's so much more potential for water leakage. That shower head it just has to spray in between the panel and the door there where the hinges are. It's just not going to go anywhere else. So we have to talk to the homeowners and make sure they have the right expectation. We can try and put seals, but it's going to be really difficult. The other thing is that when you're setting up a neo-angle, just because the door is usually placed in the center, it means that you have to find some way to support that door. And again, we have those methods that I discussed, so it doesn't have to be a header like this. We could have that right panel going to the ceiling. We could do a 1/2-inch panel in some cases if it fits the criteria, but we have to plan in some sort of support. And then those angles are supposed to be 135 degrees, and hardware is set up for neo-angle showers at 135 degrees. So when it's not built quite right, when you've got 137 degrees on one corner and 132 degrees on the other corner, just be aware that that could create some complications as we're trying to use some hardware. Neo-angles with walls have to take some precautions because there is a tendency to take a neo-angle and just cut that angle in half and set a wall so that it's got a 67.5 degree angle, and that's shown in that left side drawing. Now, if you have a 67.5-degree angle, what's going to happen is that door that, again, is able to swing in is not going to swing all the way through. It is going to stop, and it's going to stop really hard on that wall, and you'll end up damaging the wall or breaking the glass. So the door has to be able to swing through. It must swing all the way through at 90 degrees. And what that means is pre-planning and making sure that when you're building that wall, you build that wall so that it's got a 90-degree angle for the door swing, and then that leaves the other, whatever that math is, 45-degree angle on the actual wall. So keep that in mind. We've had too many situations where that wall has had to be rebuilt because we really don't want to put heavy glass in that scenario. Sticking with the conversation about pony walls can cause us additional hassle when that pony wall comes out and we want the glass to then meet up with a door, meet up with the rest of the glass. Sometimes you end up with this desire as shown in the drawing here, where we've got our glass that comes out. It says glass panel at half wall, and then they wanted a 90-degree turn, and they wanted this small 3-inch panel. Well, as I mentioned before, we really need closer to 6 inches for that piece of glass to get out of the furnace and come out not warped. So 3 inches is just not going to work. We need a redesign for that. You can see in the picture where we've got a pony wall as shown in the drawing, and that piece of glass is sitting there in the center. And there's the gap in between the top of the door and the glass, and we really don't have anything that we can put in the gap. The homeowners were really happy with the finished look of this shower, but for me, that gap just seems wrong. So planning ahead when you've got those pony walls. Here's some things that you can do. The picture on the left shows that if we can bring that panel down, if we have enough room to create a panel there, a full panel, it can come off of the pony wall and then go to full size and then take up any space in between the pony wall and the door. So just allow for some space in the design, and that way we'll be able to put the panel in there right next to the pony wall. On the right-hand picture, the pony wall on the right-hand side next to the tub, I love the fact that they took that wall and turned the corner with it. So making that little turn means the front of that wall, where in the previous design he had plans for a 3-inch panel, now that panel can be good size. We can have a 6-inch panel there where it turned the corner. One thing I want to point out that I did not love about this shower is that notice there's this little wall coming up on the wall side. I'm supposed to be attaching my door there. I'm supposed to attach a door to a wall on that side, but here's this little wall that comes up, and I can't really remember what we did in this scenario. Two things come to mind. We could have done a header at the top and done pivot hinges and maybe tried to fill in that gap with some metal. We might have had them rebuild the shower and take that little wall out, but try and give your door a nice straight spot to hinge. So those are pony walls. They get in the way all the time. They can be really beautiful and really useful, but they can get in the way. The other small thing to bring up, you don't have a lot of control at the design stage, but there tends to be some inconsistent framing a lot of times around pony walls where they're not quite set at 90 degrees to the wall. They're not quite plumb. They're not quite level. It's just one of those design pieces or one of those construction pieces that tends to not quite be as straight as the rest of the room. I want to talk quickly about steam showers and curbless showers. Steam showers, the first thing to note is that they can never be true steam showers. So you are going to get leakage around the door, just like we talked about with water. air will come out too. So you have to have the right mindset. Over at the top, you got to tile that ceiling. Untiled ceilings are going to mold right away. And it's best if that ceiling can be sloped so that then any water that beads up will run down instead of ending up raining on the people in the shower. And then you can use a transom to let the steam out. There's that glass piece up above the door. And an operable transom will be able to move open and close. Just make sure it's within reach of the people using the shower. And then curbless showers are quite popular. Some of the things to watch for, we've just run into, make sure that you don't slope the outside of the shower because the door has to be able to swing open. So that part of the shower needs to be flat. As you're looking at waterproofing systems, there are some systems that limit our ability to use clips or perhaps pivot hinges. They may be some cells that have trouble with heavy glass on top of it. Watch out for lineal drains in the front. It's just a recipe for disaster. Water is running towards the door. The drain doesn't catch it all. The door doesn't catch it all, and you end up with quite a bit of leakage. And then in a curbless shower, if you're using in-floor heating, just know where that in-floor heating is because we'll have to make sure to avoid it if we've got some attachment points. Sometimes with curbless showers, I see people working or creating walk-in showers too, so no door. And my caution there, mostly related to our area maybe, but here in the Pacific Northwest, walk-in showers are very cold, so they end up being quite drafty. We like to talk to homeowners about, if you change your mind, where would we put the door if we wanted to add it? And that way they know that they're kind of making a decision that maybe has an option to add a door later, or maybe they're set into an option that can't add a door unless it's completely removed and taken apart. I don't have a lot to say about barn door sliders, but I didn't want to leave them out of the conversation. They're really nice to have, and it's so great to have a slider option that can be made with heavy glass and be made to look like it's really a nice quality addition to your bathroom. Just to mention, they may be more prone to leakage than doors and panels because you do have the gaps underneath where the doors are sliding. You really have to have an even level curb. You've got to operate the door back and forth. And as much as you might like to use a slider in a small space, you have to have at least 48 inches of space or you'll end up with openings that are too small. Handles are nice to have, but again, those will limit door openings because the door won't slide all the way behind or in front of the other. I'm so glad that I was able to provide all this information to you. I ran a little bit over, which means it shortens our question period, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you've taken if you have some, Debbie. And I want to also mention that I'd be happy to answer other questions, or you can go to our website that's listed here. And at the beginning, I told you this presentation is based on our heavy glass design guide, and I would be happy to provide you that whole guide if you want to email or go to our website with the Contact Us page.
Wow, Shannon, this has been great information. I think everyone was just had lots of questions. They've been coming in throughout the whole session, so that's good. So let's get started on that. So I've been going through these questions as they've been coming in, so everything will be from like the beginning towards the end. So the first question is, are the sweeps and seals made out of silicone material?
They're vinyl or poly. What is poly? Poly. Yeah, short for something. Yeah, vinyl or poly.
Okay, great. Could you reconfirm what the maximum width of a glass door could be before the weight of the glass applies too much torque to the hinge hardware, or in other words, just be too heavy?
Yeah, so first off, I was mentioning that you shouldn't use heavy glass showers on fiberglass, and that applies to any size door. So no heavy glass on fiberglass, there's too much pressure. But when we're working with a tiled situation, our standard hinges, and again, these are the hinges that we use, will allow for up to 36 inches, so 35 and 15/16 before we, and 110 pounds, before we need to go to a heavy duty hinge. So we have a second hinge option that would allow the door to go to almost 39 inches, 38 and 15/16. And I believe that brings us to about 140 pounds as the door weight. And factors that will come in there, sometimes when people are looking for things really big, sometimes they also want heavy glass, so we have to factor in if it's half-inch glass, so we have to adjust the weight if it's half-inch glass too, if that's part of our weight limitation. So those are the maximums for our hardware, and whatever hardware is being used by your local glass shop would be what you'd want to keep in mind.
Okay, and early on you mentioned you were talking about code in Portland. Does Portland also use the international code?
I have not researched international code related to any glass. I just haven't gotten into looking at that, so I'm not sure if what would apply there. Sorry.
That's okay. Let's see. I think you already talked a little bit about the no thresholds and curbless showers. So I don't know if you wanted to expand upon that at all. Someone had questions about, what do you do for the glass? But I think you already expanded upon that.
Yeah, I guess some other things that we have to watch for is that when we're attaching to a curb or curbless, when we're using a screw, we want our screws are 3/4 of an inch, and when you factor in the metal and then the size of the tile and then the layer underneath that, 3/4 of an inch does not enter the waterproof barrier area. So that's our goal, is to just really kind of tack in something to the top of the tile just to give it a little more stability. When we're using something like a pivot hinge, that pivot hinge has to be really, really sturdy, and so those screws are 2-inch screws. Some of the combinations of scenarios that have come into play that have really made it difficult is when you have a curbless shower with a waterproofing system where we cannot penetrate the membrane at all with those 2-inch screws, and someone wants to have the door hinged off of a 1/2-inch panel, those pieces coming together mean that we can't offer that solution, because that 1/2-inch panel really needs to be sturdy, and we really need to screw into that membrane, and it just makes it impossible in some of the curbless designs. I should mention too that anytime we're screwing into and through the waterproofing membrane, we also have to put some silicone in there. We have to make sure that we are waterproofing the portion that we are adding. So hopefully that helps.
Oh, wow. Yes, you really expanded upon it. Thank you. So someone was asking about using electronic controls with a remote. Any information that you can share on that?
I don't know if that would be electronic controls for the shower head, if it's controlling the water. I mean, that would be a great solution if that's what they're talking about. Anything
for the water. Yep, the person just said it, for the water.
Yeah. I mean, that gets more into plumbing, but whatever method is needed so that the person doesn't have to step in the shower, that sounds great. That sounds wonderful. I hadn't actually encountered a job where they were using that, but that sounds perfect.
Okay. So are you good to keep going a little bit? I do have more questions, Shannon.
Sure.
Okay, just wanted to be sure. So someone was asking, what is better, clips or channels for installation?
Yeah, it's really about aesthetics because both of them are going to be just as waterproof. Um, the conversation that we have with homeowners is that homeowners sometimes will look at the clips and they'll say, "Oh, the clips are more frameless because you only have that one 2x2 piece of metal, and so there's technically less metal." And other people will look at the channel and they'll say, the way the channel runs down in a continuous strip, you almost don't see it. You end up looking through it, whereas the clips have, they kind of draw your eye to it. And so both are right. Whoever thinks their shower looks better with clips versus U-metal, that's what they should use. Both just as watertight. The clips will be more expensive because the hardware itself is more expensive, and we have to fabricate the glass so it has a little cutout so that we can do a screw through that clamp.
Okay, great. You're always expanding on these, so really enjoying that because everything's being recorded, so everyone's hearing the questions when they listen to the recording. So I want to thank you for that. So I'm just going to keep rolling. What are the new innovations or perimeters to faucet handle placement near the entrance? Any thoughts on that?
Faucet handle placement. Oh, yes. It's wonderful. The placement near, this again just takes care of the fact that you don't have to step into the shower. So anything like that. We've seen it tucked into a pony wall that's right when you open the door. Maybe there's a wall, and around the corner are the faucet handles. Watch out that it's not going to impact the door swing, have the door run into those handles because they're so close to the edge. But yeah, thinking that through, I was looking at a design with one of the designers, and I said, "Ooh, are we going to have a problem here with stepping into the shower?" And she goes, "I'm not new to this. I took care of that." I'm like, okay. So I love working with people who think that through and have it all set up and all handled.
Okay, good. So someone was asking about, is the channel purchased through the glass provider? That's a good question.
Yes, absolutely. Different glass providers will provide their showers in different ways. We actually do the whole thing, and we won't do anything but the whole thing. So that means that we do the measuring, we provide the material, all the materials, and all the labor, and we do everything from start to finish. Some manufacturers will allow people to. They'll just allow people to buy the glass and buy the shower and do it themselves and decide on who's going to do the measurements and who's going to do the install. So that may be flexible in other areas, but buying it from the glass shop is the way to go because you want to make sure that you get the right channel for the size of glass, and your glass shop's going to know what the right thing is.
Okay. Early on you were talking about, when people are entering the shower and water shocks. Have you ever used a toe tester when turning on? This person says they've done this hundreds of times. So just wanted to know if you've used anything like that, a toe tester.
I haven't. I'm thinking that they're talking about the small spigot down at the bottom of the shower so you can kind of turn it on and get it to the right spot before you
probably
turn on the full shower.
I'm not familiar with that, but I think so.
Yeah. I tend to let the plumbers do their thing, so I'm not sure about that.
Okay, good answer. And I think you talked a little bit about this, but what about using top pivot hinges to hinge off the glass instead of side hinges?
Yeah, definitely. So in our scenario where we're using a 1/2-inch piece of glass to hinge the door off of, you can use, with that 1/2-inch piece of glass, you can use glass-to-glass hinges, or you can use a hinge that goes over the top and it ties the 1/2-inch glass to the top of the door. There are some other pieces of pivot hinge hardware where if the glass is going all the way to the ceiling, there's a sort of L-shaped pivot hinge where one part of it will clamp the glass nice and sturdy, clamp the panel, and then the other side will go to the top of the of the door. So there's a variety of pivot hinge hardware, and finding the right piece to get that clamp for whatever your layout is at the top is probably going to be available because there's so many different options.
Okay, and that person is thanking you. She says, yes, pivot hinges, that's it.
Great.
Okay, boy, there's so many questions here. Let me just quickly go through, see. So there was a comment when we were talking earlier about the channel, and this person commented, they said the channel is installed by the glass people before the tiling. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. So that's probably where the other person was going with that. So again, our method, we like to do the whole thing. And so we make that part of our service that the contractor will call and say, okay, at this point, I'm going to have the waterproofing in and I'm ready for you to put the channel in. And we like to do that. We put the channel in ourselves, and then that way we know that it's going to be plumb and level. And at that point, we know exactly where the glass is going to be, so we go ahead and do our measurements as well. It doesn't have to be done that way. The channel could be given to the tile setter or given to the contractor by the glass people. It just depends on whether or not they want to be a part of setting that. We like to be a part of it just to make sure that everything goes fine.
Okay, and since we're talking about the channels, there's been a lot of questions here about moisture getting trapped there. Is mold a problem? Does it turn greenish? They're just wondering if there are ways to keep that from happening, or certain cleaning products.
Mm-hmm. So the channel is siliconed.
You did talk about that. I remember hearing you say that.
Yeah, but it's also siliconed in two places. So it's siliconed where the glass meets the top of the metal and where the metal meets the tile. And so a bead of silicone on there should create the waterproofing that you need. If there's a hole or something, then something like that, we would want to go back and get that fixed up. But you shouldn't end up with water there in the channel with proper siliconing. What was the green?
It turns greenish, right?
Yeah. So all of the hardware that's used should not turn green. We've had some pieces where we've had to send it back. Some things turned green, and it's tend to be because of the coating or it's not properly made. So hardware shouldn't turn green unless it's not coated or it's specifically unfinished. And when it comes to the silicone some people don't like silicone itself because it can get moldy and black over time, but it really serves the purpose of waterproofing. It really needs to be there. And so just a matter of, scrubbing it and keeping it clean, washing it every 2 weeks at least, and just kind of normal cleaning and maintenance is all you can really do for that, because we do need to have the silicone there. And then it may need to be replaced within like 3 to 5 years, depending on how much it's been worn off from cleaning, or how much damage it's taken over time, or how green it is. So silicone is one of those things that needs to be a maintenance item, kind of like when you're sealing your tile. Silicone needs to be maintained too.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about the different organic elements that are in water itself that can create issues too. So I think it just depends on the water source.
Yeah, and another thing that we always offer is there are coatings for glass that make it easier to clean, so that when you do have some of those hard water stains, you can still get the staining, you still want to squeegee and you still want to get it off of there, but then at least when you get hard water spots, the hard water spots are on the coating, not on the glass, so it makes it easier to clean off. So those coatings are available from all over the place. There's lots of different manufacturers for that.
Okay. Wow. I mean, I still have a couple more questions. Are you still okay?
Sure. And anyone else who wants to email, that's fine. I'd be happy to help. That's what I'm here for.
And I think one of the, I guess the cleaners themselves is something that what would you recommend for cleaning? Talking about the silicone, of course, so you need to be careful with it.
Yeah, you want to use something that's ammonia-free. And again, we're always recommending the coating. If you have the coating on there, you want to be sensitive to that. You don't want to use anything abrasive. And even with the glass, you don't want to use anything that's going to scratch the glass. So when you have coating on there, we actually recommend using a nylon body puff with a little dot of dishwashing liquid, and you just rub that around, and it easily sloughs off all of the mineral deposits that have been on there. If you don't have coating and you really need to get serious about cleaning your shower, what is it? It is,
That's okay.
Oh,
so
I've
many
just
products
lost my
out
train
there.
of yeah. There are some hardcore ways that you can basically almost sand off a piece of the glass, but you have to make sure that it's right for glass. And we have some 6,000 grit sandpaper that you can't get all over the place. There are some heavy duty methods, and here locally, and there's probably some other ways, if it's gotten really bad, you can actually get a glass polisher, a person to come out and polish your entire glass, make it look almost like new, and then maybe you can start over and do a coating.
Yep, and someone suggested just wiping it down with a microfiber cloth every time the shower is used. It helps a lot as well.
Maintenance is the key.
Yeah.
Steel wool, 4/0 steel wool.
Ah, there it is. Thank you. So you do think of it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to go through some of these things. You talked pretty much towards the end about the barn door sliders. Do you recommend those on tub mounts or not?
Yeah, tubs are really tricky because we have had so much water leakage underneath barn door sliders that we make sure that we always have that conversation with the homeowners when they're doing that. And it's just the combination of the top of the tub is not sloped as much as the shower curb is, so it doesn't slope into the tub. And the location of it means that the water hitting that tub is hitting it with some force because it's so much closer than the floor. And so the combination of the slope and hitting it with force, it just tends to have water work its way underneath barn door sliders so much more than it would on a full-size shower enclosure. So it is definitely something to keep in mind. And we can try and do some thresholds and some seals, but it's nothing that we would we wouldn't want to tell the homeowner up front that everything was going to be just fine. We'd have the conversation to warn them that there will be more leakage than if they go with a standard slider.
Okay, and then there's a question in here, and I'm just going to say to the person that says that they are in Portland, if you wouldn't mind reaching out. Hi, her first name is Angela, and she said that she may want to work with you. So I'll have her reach out to you on what she would like to speak with you about. And then, and then finally, let's see here. Do you have, I'm just going to finish up with this. This person has said, I've had installers who don't like to have the glass installed directly in the tile as there is an opportunity for breakage. They prefer installing an actual channel recessed in the tile. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have those concerns too as we're doing it, and we have that conversation. So it's just a matter of weighing the aesthetics and the reality. So we have that conversation to say, okay, when we do this beautiful design that you want, because it's really wonderful to have it stuck in the tile. When we do this beautiful design that you want, there is some potential that if something happens to the glass, you're going to have to tear the whole thing apart. So we can't weigh that for them. You know, how much do they want the look of that? What are they willing to risk to get that? So we tend towards the channel for that reason, but if someone wants it the other way, we'll let them. We just want them to be fully informed.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, there still are lots of questions coming in, and people are thanking you for a wonderful presentation, and I'm thanking you as well for this has been a great presentation. I've learned a lot too. And I want to thank Bloom for sponsoring today's session and all of our webinars this month. And I hope that you will return, Shannon, next year to do something with us. I would really love to have you do another presentation.
Yeah, it would be great. I had a great time. It was wonderful, and I'm so happy that I got a chance to talk to all of you. Feel free to contact me. I'd love to chat more.
Okay, thank you so much, and thanks to all of you in the audience. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.